It's witchcraft.
Hey, it's 4:20 a.m. Hi, and welcome to episode 30 of the Stoned Witches Hour.
Holy crap, 30.
I know, it sneaks up on you. 30 sneaks up on everybody. Tonight, we're going to be talking about witchy happenings, dueling cryptids, and a haunted house of never-ending renovation.
I don't care what your story is about because nothing is going to beat tonight the dueling cryptids. Because when the hell does that happen?
I have to say, a haunted house is spooky, but dueling cryptids, I'm so curious. So let's get into our story this evening. It was just the full moon. Let's get talking about some witchy stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to pack a bowl. Why don't you pack a bong? And then we'll start off with a little, it's been a witchy week.
All right, let's do it. So I'm Laylla, representing the West Coast, and of course, the best weed and the spookiest stories.
Best weed, my ass. Because I'm high. And, I always am high, but I am always still Chelle, still on the East Coast and loving it.
Awesome.
But I think, in terms of what kind of witch are you, I think one thing with the millennial group, and this is why I kind of wanted to talk about this, they're relying on the internet for a lot of things. The internet was up and coming when we were what, in our 20s?
In our 20s, yeah. When I was first looking, it was the late 80s. I was in high school in the mid to late 80s, and I didn't even know what I was looking for, really. I had read The Mists of Avalon, and I wanted something like that. So I guess if you really want my history, read The Mists of Avalon and The Clan of the Cave Bear. And, or actually, was it The Clan of the Cave Bear or The Valley of Horses?
Well, the whole series.
The whole series, the goddess-based religions in that book, I knew I wanted something like that. My soul wanted something between the Mists of Avalon and the Clan of the Cave Bear kind of thing. But there was no internet then. It was baby internet, and there certainly weren't any witches on it in as far as I could find in the mid 80s. And the books were few and far between. So
especially where we both are from, upstate New York, not very plentiful in the 80s on the books on paganism or witchcraft.
Very conservative areas, very conservative. And so they didn't have much of anything. Do you remember how you first stumbled, like your first inklings that maybe witchcraft was the path you wanted to go down?
Sort of similar. I didn't read Clan of the Cave Bear until after I met you. You prompted me to read that. But I had read Mists of Avalon, and there was just something that I just couldn't shake. I couldn't shake it. What's ironic about it is I had read that book and was like, so, I don't want to say like taken over by it, but kind of. And then shortly after that was when I met you. And that was really what tied it all together for me.
Yeah.
Because
wow. I have wicked chills.
You were already started on that path when I met you and was looking for a way to get to that path. And I probably read that book about a year, maybe year and a half before I met you. And then meeting you kind of opened that gate more.
I had been solitary for a long time through the rest of my high school years and then into college. I had discovered Laurie Cabot's book, might have been one of the first ones where
Power of the Witch. Yep.
Power of the Witch, and then Gerald Gardner's The Big Blue Book. I
forgot. Just The Big Blue Book. I still have one of those.
I still do too. And so I found those, and I knew that there was a word for what I believed. And so I started calling myself Wiccan, and which I no longer identify with. But at the time, that's what I knew. I knew I was a Satanist for a little while in high school because that was the closest thing I could find. But it didn't really fit. It felt too Christian to me. But yeah, when I had been a solitary and I would find anything I could. I was looking constantly on message boards online for other witches. And then when I moved to the southern tier of New York and met you and a bunch of your friends and the group of pagans there that you guys, and then an established established pagan group in the area, and it was mind blowing. The first, I still remember, it was a Yule ritual was the very first one that I went to, and I can still remember kneeling in front of the woman who had called the goddess, and I could literally see her. I don't know if she was really pregnant in real life or if I just see her that way, but just like beautiful, pregnant and about to give birth any second, and just talking to her as if she was the goddess, and just feeling so connected to that energy, and just so in love with the community, and meeting you and everyone else just really clinched it. And it was like one of the best things ever.
It was, yeah, those were good times.
They really were.
Another thing that kind of happened around that same time is around the time I met you and kind of figured out what this thing was that I was drawn to. AOL and dial-up.
Yes.
That's when that shit was going. And
chat rooms, the AOL chat rooms.
Yeah, and I am not any internet historian by any means. I am personally going to call it the oldest pagan type website. It might not be. Don't send hate mail. But it definitely is one of them, if not the oldest, and that's the Witch's Voice. Yeah, the Witch Box, the Witch's Voice. And that was like what opened the door to mass information. We had talked about in our last episode and in previous episodes about our hometown, E&R Gifts. That was a great shop that we had access to, but they only had so much.
And even that shop called itself an unusual gift shop.
Right.
It was the pagan store. They had the herbs and the incenses. They had the goddess and god figurines and the crystals and the tarot decks and the books. But they didn't call themselves, even right up until they passed away, decades after we, found them, they never called themselves really. They recognized the pagan community in the area, but they did not call themselves a pagan shop.
But locally and in person, they were our only resource for a long time. And then when Witchvox and the internet came about, like, holy shit, there was just so much information and so much. And to kind of touch a little bit on where I have always found myself from the beginning to the end is eclectic. And part of that was the exposure to options.
Yes.
The exposure to options. They talk about hedge witches and kitchen witches and green witches and cosmic witches. Well, let me do 4 different rituals or spells, and I'll show you each one of those witches and each one of those spells. Like,
yes,
the variety is fabulous with being eclectic.
I love the freedom of that because I'm someone always looking for new things to learn. I consume books and media. And so witchcraft to me was a natural extension of that. I could learn as much as possible about all these beautiful, wonderful religions and cultures and beliefs and honor them and cherish them in different ways. And I love learning about them. I now call myself a universalist witch or a universalist pagan, because not in the Christian sense of universalist, but more because I love all of it. I'm constantly, looking for new things and trying to learn new things, and I'm open to all of it. And I think a lot of us grew up in Christian religions. I was in a very agnostic kind of household until my mother remarried into a very, I guess as religious as Methodists can get, but into a Methodist family where church was, you went to church, and I was supposed to be baptized and all of that. And I didn't like the constriction. I didn't like this is just the only answer, and you have to believe the answer I give you. I don't care that you've read 3 different books or philosophers or whatever. I don't want to hear any arguments. This is the answer. And I hated that. It felt too confining to me, too authoritarian.
And I kind of had that same upbringing, that agnostic. I had my parents were both inundated in the Baptist church up until my birth.
Scary.
I know, right? Up until my birth, but the minute I was born, all of a sudden, parents hate religion. So
hold on a second. Your hippie wild mother was a Baptist?
Prior to sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Wow, that's quite the turnaround.
My parents met at like an after school Baptist grouping gathering, get together and talk about Baptisty stuff.
What happened? Did your mom try acid after she gave birth to you or something? And then her mind expanded, or what woke her up?
It was called 1969.
That'll do it.
That did it. My mother became a musician. She started out singing and playing a 12-string acoustic, progressed into being a piano player in a rock and roll band. So yeah, like sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
A little bit of weed expanded her mind,
A
apparently.
little bit of weed expanded her mind. And my dad kind of went into the whole, law enforcement. If I don't have evidence, it isn't real. That law enforcement investigative mind. If I can't find it, if it's not provable, it's not there. So he just dumped religion as a whole.
Interesting that they went in opposite directions. It's no wonder they ended up divorcing.
Right. And my mom kind of went into the free love and all that. But then we fast forward to the 80s, so my parents were non-religious when I was young. But then my mother remarried a Catholic, became Catholic, which
she was searching too, it sounds like. It sounds like she was really looking for something.
I remember as a teenager thinking, you're becoming a what? Like it baffled me. But very much Christmas and very much Christmas and Easter Christian. So she did change religions to get remarried, but we were on that cycle of we had to go on Christmas Eve to midnight mass. We had to go on Easter Sunday. And I hated it. I was a chubby kid, as we all know. And you know what I didn't like about church?
What's that?
It was like exercise. Okay. Sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel. Like I was not down with sit, stand, kneel. Like I was a chubby kid who just wanted to sit there and be left alone.
And it was probably boring for a kid too.
And in retrospect, I think I had a touch of ADHD, non-diagnosed, because I can't listen to anybody talk about stupid bullshit for an hour plus. I can't. I couldn't as a child or a teenager. Like I can't now. Like if you're just going to lecture me about stupid bullshit for like over an hour, you lost me 5 minutes in.
I think that's pretty much anybody. Even neurotypical people have the same kind of thing.
Right. I just remember those Christmases and Easters just sitting there just as a teenager thinking, this is a bunch of crap I'm being fed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was those questions, those same type of questions that led me to looking for something else that did have answers. I was tired of being told because I said so or because it's in the Bible. And then I'd actually look at the Bible and that's not really what it said.
But even as a teenager, and again, just Christmas and Easter exposure. But even as a teenager, I felt like I was being programmed and I didn't like it. Like it was almost like I wasn't absorbing their concepts because I knew I was being programmed. And I was like, if I wanted to do it willingly, great. But who do you think you are? Like I felt like I was being programmed. That's the only way I can explain it.
Questions. I remember that questions were not welcome. They were not celebrated. They were not looked into. It was not, hey, let's dive deeper into this and look into it. It was never like that. First of all, they hated the question. And secondly, the answer was usually very pat, very simple. And it was usually, this is what the Bible says. That's it. Done. And I hated that. I couldn't reconcile that with my mind that needed more answers, more information, and wanted multiple sources. I wanted to hear things from different sides and different perspectives, and you don't get that.
Right.
So I found pagans. I went to Salem, Massachusetts for Samhain, and I was awestruck at how many pagans. They were everywhere. So many pagans. It was breathtaking. My heart was happy and full. I met some beautiful, wonderful, amazing witches and pagans that I kept in touch with for years, that I still know to this day, that I somehow found at Brushwood that we've talked about before. Some of those first pagans that I saw are now prominent pagans at this campground that I went to. So things kind of came full circle, but I saw everyone there and I knew it was possible for hundreds of thousands and thousands of pagans to be together. And then I moved a few years later to the southern tier of New York and met the pagan community there, and that you and my other friends in college that were open-minded and questioning and looking for the same things I was. And
It just kind of exploded from there.
it did. And it was wonderful to find that sense of community. And I love that people have that now in seconds. You can get on TikTok, you can get on any social media, you can get on any internet anywhere and find witches of your particular flavor.
And that's
all
the thing.
over.
There's every type of flavor. There's the very traditional, the very ceremonial witches. You know, you're into ceremonial shit, the whole kit and caboodle. There's groups out there. You know, you're a kitchen witch who's going to throw in whatever you got in the cupboard to make a spell. There's a group out there. I love it. I love it.
Too.
So that's kind of why I always from day one was more of that eclectic nature, because I love it all.
Agreed. And I have to say that, you know, I wish I could think of off the top of my head some of my favorite authors and things like that. I can tell you one of the people that I'm looking at right now that I really love what she's doing is Jessica Dore, Dore. She does tarot, but kind of with a twist. She does it more philosophically. She draws a card every day and really kind of gets into all different aspects of that card and what it means for you, for life, for everything. And I kind of love what she's doing. And she has a book called Tarot for Change. And she basically uses this, her book says, access the transformative power of symbol and metaphor through a guide to tarot that incorporates insights from the fields of psychology and behavior change, which is in my practice, that's a lot of what I do for people when I do read tarot is, you know, we kind of get into all of it, you know, what it means to them. What do these symbols mean to your life right now? And I just love how she's bringing all these different disciplines into tarot, and it's fabulous what she's doing with it. So that's one person I in particular right now am kind of interested in the field of, I don't know if she's a witch, to be honest, but I like what she's doing anyway.
I just recently, I circled back to an oldie and a goodie, and we actually had already mentioned it. I recently circled back to Laurie Cabot, Power of the Witch.
I love Laurie Cabot.
I love Laurie Cabot, and I love that I live in the same town as Laurie Cabot. Great store. Everybody should go to Enchanted. If you are in Salem, Massachusetts, visit Enchanted. It's Laurie Cabot's store. Primo supplies. And it's just got a great vibe. Just got a great vibe in there. Yeah, I circled back to Power of the Witch. This is something that we'll talk about in a future episode, but I had a period, and I think that anybody in whatever religion you are or spiritual belief or what have you, I had a period of a little bit of a disconnection. So I have been doing the reconnecting. I wanted to circle it back to where I started, you know, pushing 30 years ago with Power of the Witch.
I love that. You know, you mentioned like kind of reconnecting. I think we all kind of go through cycles in our lives. And there have been times you and I have been in a coven that was moving mountains at one time. We were doing speaking engagements in New York State and up and down the East Coast into Ohio and other places, talking about what it meant to be a witch at different colleges. It was a time when witchcraft was really kind of just getting into the popular lexicon. And so we were like right in the thick of it. We were writing rituals. We were hugely involved in our local coven.
We were involved with Phyllis Curo at that time.
And, you know, there's a couple books that mention our coven. And
we were the bomb, but then, you know, ebbs and flows, man, ebbs and flows. And then we kind of went into solitary mode.
Right.
All of us. Not just me or you, kind of our whole coven at that point kind of went into like a solitary mode for a long time. And, you know, life happens. We've all had kids, we've all had marriages, we've all had divorces. And, you know, sometimes life happened and we all got dormant in that solitary rut. And I've been trying to break free of that as of late.
Yeah. I would have to say since our biggest time, since that time at the height of us doing pretty much rituals nonstop. We were doing dark moon. Our coven celebrated together on the dark moon. We were doing dark moons. We were doing full moons. We were doing esbats and sabbats. We were just busy.
Aside from all of our speaking engagements.
Right. And then when we kind of left that and moved more into our personal lives, like you said, kind of took different directions, and we moved into solitary. I would say it's kind of, my practice has ebbed and flowed since then. There's times where I'm always, doing rituals, but very solitary. And I too have just this year coming back into, trying to find time to meditate, to do ritual, to reconnect with those things. And I think it's important to do that. Like we just had the full moon here, and I'm even just for a minute, get outside, do a small circle, do a small meditation. I had a small chalice of water and a stone and some incense and things out there that I wanted to charge. Just a few things that I wanted to have that energy of the moon. So I just placed them outside while I did a small protective circle, just asked for blessings and peace, that kind of thing, and just kept it simple, because I know if I try to jump in feet first and do elaborate rituals with chalked outlines and the proper symbols at the proper time, which I love, don't get me wrong, I love that sometimes, but if I tried to jump in and do that everything perfect, high magic, I would psych myself. I wouldn't keep up with it. It's like anything. And so I'm trying to start small. I'm pulling a tarot card for myself for the week and that kind of thing.
And, I've been trying to use it. It's so funny because we actually haven't spoken about this aside from this conversation. And it's very funny because it's been about the same amount of time, about the last year. And, let me tell you, there's something about living in Salem that makes you want to get back into doing shit again.
Gee, I'm so surprised that that's shocking, Chelle.
Something about
what could be making you want to do that?
As we've talked before, and I posted a pic on our Instagram. Maybe I'll post some more here in the coming days. I've been into these spell bottles. They're cute.
I love them. They're so pretty.
I don't even know how I got into this, to be honest. It might have been the weed. I've always been kind of the herb lady. Remember when people used to call me the herb lady?
Mm-hmm.
I have a knack for, like, you have a knack for written spells. Okay. That you shine in written spells. You definitely do better at that than I do. But where I shine is those spells where you're physically mixing shit.
You're always making the perfect blend of incense. You always had just the right oil or just the right blend of herbs for whatever ritual we were doing. We would come to you and you would come up with this amazing blend.
I was the herb lady.
Perfect. You were the herb lady.
So I'm trying to circle back to that, but in the sense of spell bottles. I am adding a couple stones here and there, but I've gotten into the wax seals, and which I hadn't before. And, so I'm kind of trying to do that potion-y kind of spells again, those herbally kind of spells. What I'm good at, mixing shit together.
I love that you took something that you're very familiar with, the herbs and the oils, and mixing them together, and you brought that to a whole new magical practice where you're making these bottles. And if I know you, the whole process is probably very meditative. You probably gather your things together and you have, you're doing your ritual as you're putting everything into the jar. And so that in itself is a very meditative, magical practice. Whether you're putting one together just to be pretty or whether you're actually doing a spell to put one together, the whole thing is a ritual. And I really like that.
But I just thought, sometimes the easiest way to reconnect is go back to what you know best. That's why I'm circling back to things that I may be spectacular at one time in my life, but it's been a while, and that's a good place to start. Get back to what you know best first and go from there. And there's something about spell bottles, and I think it's that you see it and you're visualizing what that intent was the whole time. Or if you're burying it, you're letting the earth seep in that creation and that intention to push back out. I don't want to say the result of your intention, but kinda. I am not a big fan of littering. I hate littering. There is something to be said sometimes for chucking one in a river or the ocean. Don't do it on the regular, people. That's bad juju. But once in a great while, it is warranted. There's just a lot you can do with them. And I like that too, because it's a very diverse thing. Spell bottles are diverse. Herbs are diverse. Mixing shit is diverse. I love it.
And I love it. You mentioned that it's something that you can see and it's very visible magic. Like once you get to a certain point, you can sit down and do a meditation and do your entire spell start to finish in your head. Just visualize it. And that can be very, very powerful. However, unless you can properly hold those visions in your head for the whole time, it doesn't work very well. It falls flat for most of us. So being able to smell the incense, to hear
Have
the
something
crackle of the
tangible.
fire.
Have something
Exactly.
tangible. Sometimes you just need something tangible, no matter how little or how big it is.
Yep. And so having that
Something,
physical representation in that small bottle, you've got it all right there. You can see it. And so that makes it so much easier.
yeah. So, there is a sense of there's a shift. And I don't think it's just you and I. You and I are not the only people who have tried to ramp it up a little bit in the last year or so.
Feeling that call back to natural, to magical, to the connectedness. I think with everything that's been going on, people are scared, people are nervous, and we're wanting that sense of community, that sense of connection again. And
Right.
so, finding that, and plus, the earth is hurting right now. The earth is crying out, and I think we all are responding to that in different ways. And being more magical and intentional is one of the ways that we can kind of respond to that.
Right, right. And nothing wrong with a good meditation, whether you are a witch or pagan or Wiccan or whatever. You could be a devout Christian and meditation will not hurt you.
Sometimes they say it does.
Do they really?
They do. They do.
How?
They say that it can let, Satan in. It's one of those things where like they say meditation, and it kind of is there are other religions and cultures where meditation kind of came from, I guess. And so they say it's the influence of that religion and that it's an opening for demons or Satan.
Putting your mind at peace is an opening for Satan?
I don't know. I don't understand. I was only a Christian for a very short period of time. I don't get the mindset, to be honest. But one of my favorite easy peasy rituals is smoking marijuana, to be honest. I like taking the nugs. I love growing it. It's peaceful to me. It's very zen. Gets me kind of connected back to the earth. And then breaking up a bud, just kind of breaking up some of this pot, still smoking on my XJ13 because, cheap. But I like it. I like the ritual of breaking it up, of making it ready to smoke, of putting it into either a bong or rolling a joint. Those are the parts, like when I go on a tea break, those are the things I miss, is the ritual of getting ready to smoke and then that first inhalation and exhalation. And so I will actually kind of mimic that by doing some small craft maybe and doing deep breathing exercises when I do go on a tea break, which I'm contemplating doing one soon. So, but how about you? Do you have any rituals around marijuana, or have you ever used pot in a ritual?
Going back to my spell jars, that really pretty spell jar I made last week, that I had showed you, I put a little pinch in. We are folk that covet the bud. If I'm trying to do something in an uplifting and happy, good intentions, positive change, things of that nature, I will put a pinch of weed in, because it is something that, because I covet it has value magically to me.
I think it means that not just to you. I remember seeing you had gotten a tarot deck, the
The
herbal
herbal,
tarot,
yep, herbal
and the
tarot
the 10 of cups, the happy family card, the culmination of,
was the
all these
marijuana
things
card.
is the marijuana card.
Yep.
And that stuck with me because it's so true. I feel that it's very, very true. It's such a peaceful herb.
So, I've actually, in the last couple of spell bottles I've made, put a little pinch in. I ain't wasting weed, people. Don't get all upset here. Just a little pinch. But I will use that in spells. I've used that in the past, in incense that I've made. Again, just a couple pinches. Like, I ain't all like abusing the weed and giving it away and tossing it to the wind here, folks. There's been time when I've done fairy magic where the offering I've left for the fairies has been a pinch of weed.
Oh yeah, I do that on the regular. I mean, it's something that I, like you said, it's something that I love. And so giving that as an offering means more than something that you don't really give a shit about.
I know that you have always found a ritualistic aspect of packing a pipe and smoking it. I necessarily have not. Mine has always been more of a using it in my creations.
I think that's really interesting, the coming at it from different aspects. And we can do that.
Right,
Again,
right.
the whole being eclectic, being universalist is using things in a way that feels right to you and feels natural and honors the thing that, whether it's a ritual or a spell or a plant, you're trying to honor that thing, honor that
And
energy.
and when you're solitary, you kind of do what you want, when you want, how you want it, and that's the way you roll. But in terms of being in a coven, there's been a couple of things where we're very similar, but the exact opposite. You can function like that in a coven situation. You can, maybe not always, but in ours you could, because sometimes this time we do it your way, and I'd sit there and try to ritually smoke weed, and then other times you'd try it my way and use a pinch or two of weed in a spell that we were creating. So again, back to why I love being eclectic is just because you try it doesn't mean you have to fall in love with it. You might not have liked using it in herbs and incense and such, and I might not have really gotten a whole lot of it ritually smoking it.
Right, right.
But either way, there's always that sense of, hey, let me check this out. Maybe
Exactly.
it'll work, maybe it won't work.
And that's the joy of it, is trying to find things that fit you and work for you and in your practice, and helps to make you feel closer to spirit, to the earth, to the universe, to the one.
Exactly. And I can get that from smoking. I just don't necessarily get that through the act of smoking.
Right. And for me, I've kind of, you can make anything into a ritual. There's tea drinking rituals. People have whole types of rituals around serving food or doing something of that nature. And so any simple act can become a ritual.
Everything comes down to intention, my friend.
It really does. It really does.
So what are we've had a little bit of a witchy talk. You kind of mentioned what you were smoking.
Ooh, I have something fun today. I am smoking.
What do you got?
I'm still smoking the XJ13, but I made a bunch of bubble hash.
Ooh.
I used the ass end of a bunch of jars I had. When you kind of, you're breaking up a jar or a bag or whatever, and you get down to the end and it's kind of like stems and the shitty buds that you kind of picked through before. Yeah, I had a whole bunch of jars of that left, and I had a couple jars of stuff that was good, but not exactly the tastiest weed.
Not your best weed ever.
Exactly. Maybe it didn't look so, one jar didn't look so pretty, and there were two that just weren't that tasty, and then a bunch of ass ends. So I dumped it all together, and I froze it, and then I used my little bags and some ice and water, and I made myself some bubble hash, and it's fabulous. So probably, I would have to say bubble hash tends to have, what's the THC on bubble hash? About 60%. They think it can have about THC content of about 60% in bubble hash.
Oh, wow.
Could be a little higher. I tend to just use the, I kind of give away the lower grades, because when you do bubble hash, you have a couple different grades. I have 3 different grades when I'm done of hash. And the lower grade I tend to give away. The middle grade is my kind of like everyday smoke. And then there's the little tiny bit at the bottom that's blow your mind. Has to be, I know it's got to be over 60% THC, because I just put a little tiny bit of this on a bowl and whew, that'll kick my ass. I am toasted, absolutely toasted. So, and it's very, very tasty. So basically you're just knocking the trichomes, the THC laden little crystals off the nugs. And that's pretty much all you're left with. So it's very yummy.
Nice.
Yeah. So some boring XJ13 with some super tasty bubble hash.
So basically you took your mediocre weed and gave it a shot of awesomeness.
That's exactly. I put awesome sauce all over the top of it. It's fabulous.
I have a new one today.
I love it. What you got?
This is called Melon Baller.
Oh, melon baller. Does it taste
It doesn't.
melony?
I was just gonna say it doesn't taste anything like melons.
Damn, I have had weed that had kind of a melon taste before and it was nice. I'm
This
sad
does
that
not.
doesn't.
No, actually, it's more. I almost want to call it a weedy taste. You know?
Oh, okay. Your weed tastes like weed.
I
Good,
weed tastes
good.
like weed. That I don't know how to describe it. That greeny weedy taste.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
know
know.
that's
Smells
pretty much
good.
what my XJ tastes like. Just grainy weedy.
Smells good. Not as compact as I've been getting
Okay.
lately. So this stuff I don't actually have to grind up, but unfortunately, I've gotten in a groove for the last several weeks where I've had weed that had to be ground up. So now it's almost like habit. So I'm grinding anyway.
So instead of your traditional stuff and shove, you kind of got used to the whole grind and pack.
You do something 21 times and that should be a habit.
Now it's a habit.
But it's definitely not as compact. It's a little more fluffy, which I haven't had fluffy weed in like weeks and weeks. So
Yeah.
I'm not all upset about that, but good taste, good high. I got to admit though that as you can tell, and as we talked about when we got on, it's given me the kind of high that I actually didn't want to get out of bed and sit in my computer chair. So I'm actually recording today in bed. I'm sitting and I'm dressed, but like very relaxed high.
Nice.
Like, I mean, like I said, I'm sitting up. I mean, I got clothes on, but I am just propped up with pillows, kind of lounging out in my bed today, and it's all
Nice.
the smelling baller.
Well, I have to say, thankfully, we are recording on a Saturday today because this awesome sauce, I'm very happy and but I cannot focus. So I find myself sitting over here just smiling. I'm like nodding at what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, that's so deep, man. And then I forget what I was going to say. So I'm having a great conversation with you, but I might lose my train of thought.
That's okay. You're losing your train of thought. I'm laying in bed. We're having fun.
Together, we got this, girl. We got this.
So it's actually it's a 31% THC.
Nice.
So you're really high and really comfortable. You don't want to be, this isn't like I got shit to do weed. This is like I'm lounging on the weekend.
I gotcha. That sounds like a great weekend weed. I love
Well,
it.
actually, it sounds like we're kind of maybe different weeds with maybe different levels, but we're definitely in the same vibe of.
Well, I have to say, by putting the bubble hash on top, whether it's 60% or what percentage it has to be, it very much did take my mediocre weed to the next level for sure.
I do think it's kind of interesting though that adding something like bubble hash can really turn a mediocre weed into an amazing weed. Point to ponder. And I've been doing that lately with like keef, adding keef to the top of some mediocre, okay stuff. So yeah, maybe it's mix and match time.
I'm going to get you introduced to the wonderful world of handheld torches so that you can get over your fear of I don't know what's up with your son-in-law and the ginormous butane freaking flamethrower that you guys use for heating up your dab rigs. That's a little excessive.
Truly.
We're going to introduce you to the cutesy little, better than, not the creme brulee ones, those aren't strong enough, but really nice small handheld torches that you can use to heat up a dab rig. Just a click and a trigger, and we'll get you introduced to some concentrates and dabs and see how you like that when I come out there for our October episodes.
Which, if for all of our listeners out there, if you are not excited for these October episodes yet, get excited because we are excited. A, we're going to be together. B, we're going to be in Salem. And C, it's October.
It's October. Yay. It's our favorite. I love it. I cannot wait. I'm going to be in Salem. You actually have fall there. It's going to be fabulous.
And we have witches. We have Bora.
Wicked places. Oh, Bora. I love Bora.
Wicked places. And I know you have ocean, but there's something about East Coast ocean.
It's true. It's cold. It's moody. It's fabulous. I can't wait.
We love.
It is. It's true. So used to the cold. So used to the cold.
Speaking of moody, I do have a brief story today. I know that we kind of got all witchy today on the Stoned Witches Hour, but I do have, this is one of those that you're going to be like, where the hell did you find this?
Awesome. Well, mine's a little bit longer, so you go first with your brief one, and then I'll get into mine.
Now, I love cryptids.
You do. You are like the cryptid queen. You're always coming up with spooky, scary, creepy cryptids. Is this one going to ruin yet another one of my cherished paranormal things?
You could die with this one again.
Oh no.
But this one has an arch enemy.
Oh, okay. It has a nemesis.
We have a cryptid arch enemy nemesis thing going on here.
I love it. I love it. Oh, it's like a battle royale in the cryptid world.
It is. It is. In the names, they'll just kill you.
Oh boy.
So, they're both kind of brief. I'm going to kind of talk about both of them in their history.
All right.
First off, we've got the Dewayyo.
Dwayyo.
I hope I'm saying that right. If you are from the state of Maryland, please tell me if I'm saying this wrong. So this is from Maryland, the Dewayyo, and it is actually Maryland's Wolfman.
Why is it called the Dwayyo? Where does the term Dwayyo come from?
That I'm not sure.
That's okay.
It
It sounds like some mixed up term of like Wendigo.
I'm wondering if it could be Native American just because of the area. Maryland was also, much like most places on the East Coast, very active with Native activity.
Sure. Yeah, they lived all over here.
But this is described as having features similar to a wolf with dark fur over its entire body, long bushy tail, dog-like nose, but it stands like a human and it utilizes its forelegs like arms. And it is said to be about 6 feet tall.
Like that thing in Texas.
Kind of, yeah. But this one's from Maryland.
Oh, well, maybe it was on a road trip.
We all do it. It is.
Hey, some of the Sasquatches travel down the East Coast. Maybe Dwayyos go from Maryland to Texas.
It actually could be. Because, when you look at the whole grand scheme of the world, they're not that far apart.
That's true. Okay, so they stand 6 feet tall.
Now, this is where it gets kind of funny about this mortal enemy thing. So, according to legend, the Dwayyo is the mortal enemy of do not laugh at this.
Uh-oh. Oh, don't tell me that.
The Dwayyo is the mortal enemy of the Snallygaster.
the Snallygaster?
We smoke way too much weed for some of these cryptid names.
The Snallygaster. Okay, that's my new favorite cryptid. Okay. The Snallygaster. Okay, I'm not laughing. See, I'm not laughing. The Snallygaster.
Now,
yes, Chelle, go ahead and tell us about the Snallygaster.
The Snallygaster is another area cryptid. Maryland must be a hot spot. Another area cryptid that is described as, listen to this shit, a flying, blood-sucking reptile.
Whoa. That seems excessive. That's like a lot of creepy things all in one.
For real. And it has been sighted in the Maryland portion of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Okay, so, stay out of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I gotcha.
The Dewayyo and the Snallygaster have had vicious encounters, reportedly dating back to the early settlements of the Middletown Valley.
What?
So actually, not only has there been sightings of the Dewayyo way back to the early settlement days, but also the Snallygaster, as well as their vicious encounters.
Their vicious Snallygaster encounters with the Dewayyo.
You laugh, but that damn thing is a flying, blood-sucking reptile
that's attacking the 6 foot tall wolf, standing on its hind legs wolf. Do we get a pay-per-view of this? Because I would totally buy that. I would pay for that. Right? I want to see these battles. Are they singular? Is it like an army? Do they how do these fights happen? I don't dive bombing from the Snallygaster? What's it called? That's Scallywag. What the fuck's it called again?
Snallygaster.
Snallygaster. Okay.
So the first mentions of the Dewayyo come from a sighting in 1944. So like this isn't like super old, okay?
Okay.
And the first sighting comes from West Middleton in Frederick County, Maryland. And witnesses heard the creature's frightful screams and then footprints attesting to the claims of the sightings.
Oh.
The tale did not come to prominence until a newspaper account in the Frederick News Post on November 27th, 1965, which gave a detailed account of the creature. And what this newspaper article says, in quotes, near the woods of Gabriel State Park, John Becker went out in his yard to investigate a strange noise. It was getting dark and he started back to the house when he saw something moving towards him. It was as big as a bear, had long dark hair, a bushy tail, and growled like a wolf or a dog in anger. As it got closer, it stood up on its hind legs and attacked him. Becker fought off the creature until it ran into the woods, leaving him, his wife, and his children in horror. Deciding to remain anonymous until the alias John Becker, he filed a report with local state police telling of an attack by a mysterious monster that he called Dwayyo.
Interesting.
So it sounds like this guy, John Becker, is actually kind of the person who named it, but I'm not sure where did he pull that out of his ass? Is it a name that he had heard? Like, I don't know where Dwayyo comes from, but this guy named it basically.
That's the first known, like, written account of something called a Dwayyo.
But once he talked about his story in the Frederick News Post in 1965, then more stories started coming out in area newspapers where other sightings were being reported in nearby areas. Once somebody admitted that they saw something fucked up, then other people were willing to do it. No one wanted to be the first one to sound like a crazy one.
It sounds like maybe this is something that they had known about for a while. This is something that people had seen and obviously had a name for.
But wouldn't
and then
admit to.
But wouldn't talk, they talked about amongst themselves, but it wasn't really something they were going to go on the news and say until this person under an alias told the newspaper and they did a story on it. And then people were more willing to talk. But that sounds like they had known about it already.
Yeah, it definitely was something no one wanted to be the first one to talk about it publicly kind of thing. But in the summer of 66, the creature was sighted again on the outskirts of the Gabriel State Park when a man who was only referred to as Jim A. encountered the Dwayyo as he was heading towards his campsite. He described it as a shaggy two-legged animal the size of a deer that had a triangle-shaped head with pointed ears and a chin, dark brown in color, and when he approached it, it made a horrid scream and backed away from the man.
Oh, wow.
Jim went on to say that the creature had an odd walk as it retreated, like its legs stuck out from the trunk of its body, and its movements appeared almost spider-like as it backed away.
Didn't people say that's how the Texas creature moved?
Kinda, yeah. As a matter of fact, now that you mention it, I didn't even think of that.
Maybe it is a Dwayyo on a family road trip.
Then, in the fall of 76, that sounds like a song. Another sighting of the Dwayyo took place in Frederick County near Thurmont, where two men were driving on Route 77 onto a private road. And there they saw a large creature run across the road in front of their car. And they described it as, and I quote, at least 6 feet tall, but inclined forward as it was moving quickly. Its head was fairly large and similar to the profile of a wolf. The body was covered in brown or brittle colored fur, but the lower half had a striped pattern of noticeable darker and lighter banding. The forelegs were similar and held out in front as it moved. The back legs were very muscled and thick, similar to perhaps a kangaroo. This was not a humanoid type creature. It did not have the characteristics of an ape. It was much more similar to a wolf or a ferocious dog. However, it was definitely moving upright and appeared to be adapted for that type of mobility.
Creepy.
I was particularly impressed by the size and strength of the back legs and the stripes on the lower half of the body and the canine wolf-like head.
So detailed.
I know, right? So later in 78, two park rangers near the Cunningham Falls area encountered a large hairy creature running on two legs. Now, this is where it I don't know if you've maybe heard of this, But more than 2 centuries ago, another creature in folklore is similar, called a hexen wolf.
A hexen wolf?
Yes, and in the late 18th century, the Pennsylvania Dutch had
I was
started.
going to say it sounded like a Pennsylvania Dutch term.
The Pennsylvania Dutch settled in Upper Maryland, Carroll, Frederick, and Washington counties of Upper Maryland, because, Maryland is the first sign of civilization once you get through Pennsylvania. And almost immediately, people started talking about wolf-like creatures back then.
Wow.
Described similar to the Dewayyo, features similar to a wolf, but with a stance and stature like a human.
So maybe the hexen and the Dwayyo are like the same cryptid.
Same thing. The legend of the hexen wolf had long been known to inhabit tracts of land across much of eastern Pennsylvania. And they even talk about the hexen wolf in German folklore, which is kind of like the underlying basis of Pennsylvania Dutch. So, there is a back history of what's called the hexen wolf that is very similar to the Dewayyo, but I can't sit here and tell you that they are the same exact thing.
But it's possible from the sounds of it, maybe people had brought, this legend of the hexen wolf with them when they came to Maryland, and maybe that kind of joined in with some local tales and became the Dwayyo. So where did the fight with the scallywag Sasquatch thing come in?
Snallygaster. So this is
right, the Snallygaster.
No, this is actually where I was going to kind of wrap it around here. The first written reports of I can't get like an exact date of when they started talking about the Dewayyo, other than I said a couple of centuries ago.
Okay.
Here with the Snallygaster, the first written reports of the Snallygaster date back to 1735, when, you guessed it, German immigrants to Maryland.
Makes sense. Pennsylvania Dutch right there.
German immigrants to Maryland talked of a Schnellergeist or fast ghost, a flying beast that was alternately described as being like a bird, a dragon, a harpy, or a demon, or a combination of them all.
Creepy. I love that. Schnellergeist.
Right? Only sighted at night and was unbelievably fast.
Was it lizard-like though?
Well, it said dragon-like. I mean,
that's kind of that's lizardy. Yeah, sure.
Different description, but same kind of meaning,
Sort of, kind of, yeah.
Most of them agreed that it had wings, a razor-sharp beak with teeth, tentacles on the face, scales, and a scream like a steam train whistle, and, you guessed it, an extremely bad attitude.
Bad attitude. All right. Well, when you look like that, I can't be surprised.
Right? So most sightings of the Snallygaster were in Maryland, but it would sometimes, this is so funny, and I'm reading this word for word just because I want you to know how funny this is. Most sightings were in Maryland, but the Snallygaster would sometimes fly to other states to terrorize local people for just for fun.
Just for fun. Sometimes it likes to go sightseeing, basically.
So
Don't we all? Don't we all?
But this is the bitch with the Snallygaster. It would steal children and livestock. It would occasionally.
Oh, fuck that. Leave the kids alone, you nasty little thing. Did the Dewayyo steal kids?
After adults. No, see, what it would try to pluck you out of the sky like a frickin' eagle.
Oh, like that video of the golden eagle trying to steal a little kid?
Yeah.
Except it's a Snallygaster.
And actually, in 1909, there was an hour-long confrontation with 3 men on a train platform with a Snallygaster, and they were actually able to get away. And Theodore Roosevelt was contacted to try and hunt it down.
What? Wait. Theodore Roosevelt? The teddy bear guy? The president guy?
Frickin' Teddy Roosevelt was contacted to try and hunt it down.
Hunt down a Snallygaster?
The former president went hunting for big game. That's why I don't know.
You're shitting me.
I'm not making
legit. A dude who became president hunted a cryptid.
I will share my goddamn screen with you right now.
I love that. That's fantastic. He's now my favorite president.
Like in his presidency, he had a lot of animal heads.
He was a big hunter.
He was a big game hunter.
Yeah.
So they legit reached out to Teddy Roosevelt to try to hunt down the Snallygaster.
That's fantastic. I love it.
But even better, in the 1920s, the federal agents actually got a look at them. They actually, one of them got so drunk, one of the federal agent drunk, I wouldn't have believed it. They managed to get a good look at one as it had been attracted to a still and drank so much moonshine it fell down dead.
The agent or the cryptid?
The cryptid. The Snallygaster frickin' smelled the shine.
And was attracted to it, drank it all until it died.
The agents were pretty surprised to find the Snallygaster in the moonshine mash.
Ew.
But you know what they did?
What?
They blew it up.
Ew. Well, no evidence, I guess.
The only real check on Snallygaster is the Dwayyo. So basically, it takes a lot to kill one, and the Dwayyo is our only hope.
But they don't say where the feud started. They just say that they feud because they're in the same area. They're trying to share the same territory. Yeah,
I think it's a territorial thing. It is really kind of the problem. The Dwayyo tried to steal the Snallygaster's eggs.
Oh, I see. Oh, it's an egg-laying creature. You know, dragon, flying, laying eggs. Makes sense. Makes sense. And the Dwayyo tries to steal them. Okay.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that would start a feud.
You know, the whole "you're stealing my babies."
I gotcha. That would do it.
So they have a mouth-watering taste for the Snallygaster egg.
They just can't stay away from those eggs. It's the best omelet in town.
Right? I just want to take it back to Teddy for a minute. I just want to point out to you that the Smithsonian Institution offered a reward for the hide, and the U.S. President, Teddy Roosevelt, was actually considering postponing an international trip to actually go hunt the beast.
So he could get the hide? That's wow. Wow.
So,
hey, who knew a presidential cryptid hunt?
It's not even a presidential cryptid hunt. The U.S. president is going to put international relations on hold to hunt the cryptid. Okay?
Well, it's probably a good thing that he didn't.
I know.
I suppose. Or maybe he should have, and they wouldn't be running rampant today.
But here's and this is where I don't think it might be exclusive, either of them exclusive to Maryland. There's actually been sightings of them having a fight, the Snallygaster and the Dwayyo fighting in not only New Jersey, but West Virginia.
Oh, so they're migrating.
Someone also claimed to see a sighting of both in Ohio. That leads me to believe. Now, I know we have a lot of listeners out there who are totally into cryptids, and I might even like try to ask you guys questions on Instagram. So be ready, cryptid people. But has there ever been a battle? So we got the Snallygaster and the Dewayyo, and they like going into Pennsylvania and Ohio and New Jersey and all that. Has there ever been like a battle of the cryptids? Like, has the Jersey Devil ever been like, dude, this is my freaking state and you need to go back to your own states because the Jersey Devil thing is me here?
Yeah. Have they ever run into a Congress of Sasquatches?
Right. Are we having some cryptid convention?
Sure. Maybe they're friends. Maybe they get together and it's a big old reunion.
That's what I'm wondering, because if I was the Jersey Devil, I'm thinking to myself, that's my state, that's my territory. I'm named after New Jersey. What are you doing with your cryptid ass in my state?
Yeah, exactly. I would think it would be bad. Maybe they pretty much try to stay in their own little territories.
So both of these things, the Snallygaster and the Dwayyo, pretty much make Maryland their home, but we'll say as well as surrounding states.
Just a little bit, though, not into anyone else's territory, as far as we know.
It seems like the big war between the two is really a egg and food issue.
Gotcha. Just much like any other predators in an area.
You know, they have these nests, and the nests are where, unfortunately, the Dwayyo can get them, and they're tasty treats, man.
Wow. I like tasty treats. I have the munchies right now, actually.
Ooh, what are you eating? You eating anything?
No, sadly, I don't have any munchies. I just want them.
So that's my big cryptid story for today. I just thought, you know, I think the most hysterical part is the fact that there's two, they're warring, and that Teddy Roosevelt was like...
I love the presidential angle. That's fantastic.
No one told me that in social studies. Were you sitting in 10th grade history hearing about the Snallygaster? Because I wasn't.
No, if they told, I would have learned way more about President Roosevelt if I had heard that.
The educational systems here need to pick the facts they're telling these kids because you want to interest me, talk about the Snallygaster, and I will remember what President Teddy is.
Exactly. I would have remembered all of it. I would have. So my story goes back in time a little bit to roughly the same time period, late 1800s, early 1900s. A house at 525 South Winchester Boulevard in San Jose, California. The Winchester Mystery House.
Oh, this is a good one. This is a great story. So, do you know what year this house was built?
I do.
Tell.
Well, it started in 1884 and it didn't stop for 40 years.
That's like some shit. Like, if I'm going to contract you to build me a house, it better be done in my lifetime here, people. Like 40 years? What the hell? Were they taking a lot of lunch breaks? Like, what was going on that it took 40 years?
Everything was going on. The construction did not cease. It is rumored that a hammer was falling every second of every day for that 40 years. That some type of construction was going on 24/7, 365 days for 40 years.
Why?
Well, the rumor is that it was a curse. We'll get there. Let's start at the beginning.
Ooh, I love curses. Let's start at the beginning.
So we're going to start with a woman named Sarah Lockwood Pardee. She was born in 1839 in New Haven, Connecticut, to an upper middle class family. And she was the fifth of 7 children. She was very well educated. She spoke 4 languages. She was beautiful and quite intelligent. She was practically a genius in math and science and was very well educated.
Even though back then women weren't really considered whatever.
That's right. So during that time, educating women was seen as not necessarily something important, but it was good for a woman to speak languages and to appear educated. So she might not do anything with it, but it was good to have knowledge.
Pioneer, man. She was a pioneer.
Exactly. Now, she married a childhood friend who just happened to be William Wirt Winchester, a man who was heir to the Winchester Repeating Rifle Company.
Oh, so like the actual, what we know today is the Winchester rifle then.
Correct. The family that created that designed it and then started manufacturing it and became extremely wealthy.
Oh, wow. So this is the heir to that company's wife.
Correct. Sarah is the wife to William, who is the heir to the Winchester fortune. And they get married. Things seem wonderful. And around 1868, she gives birth to a little baby girl that they named Annie. Unfortunately, Annie had some type of wasting disease, and she didn't live past 6 weeks old.
Oh, that's horrible.
And it devastated Sarah and William. Their grief was extremely hard. They took it very, very hard. And they were so depressed and despondent over the death of Annie that they decided to never have any children.
That's horrible. That's heartbreaking.
It was about 12 years later, William's father died in 1880. And as the only son, he was the heir to the Winchester Repeating Rifle fortune, which at that time was about $20 million.
That's a lot of money in nowadays monies.
Do you want to know how much?
I know you know.
I do know. Over $700 million.
Damn!
And in addition to the $700 million fortune, it was also 50% share in the stock of the Winchester Rifle Company, which generated a daily income of over $1,000 a day.
Wow, which back then was a lot of money.
Do you want to know how much it is today?
How much?
$35,000.
A day.
A day.
So not only does he have basically the equivalent of 700 million, but he's raking it in every day.
That is correct. Then, just a few months later, he died of tuberculosis in March of 1881.
Oh my God. Now, this woman lost her child.
Correct.
And has now lost her, we'll call it high school sweetheart.
Yes.
I see this taking a dark twist.
It does. It does indeed. You'd think that she would be happy. She has this huge fortune. It's so much money, I can't even imagine spending it. How do you spend $35,000 a day?
If you want to do an experiment, give me 35,000. Show you, okay? I'll show you.
I will try. I'll try. But yeah, so she has unimaginable amounts of money and unfortunately unimaginable amounts of grief. She still has not gotten over the death of her daughter, Annie.
Well, that's the thing, you can't buy those losses. All the money in the world, and this poor woman is shattered.
Exactly. And so at the time, spiritualism was extremely popular. Contacting mediums was very, very popular. And so she did. And she contacted a medium who got in touch with William's spirit. And William told her that he was being tormented in the afterlife by all the souls of the people who had been killed by Winchester weapons.
Oh, geez. And one thing that was big back then in this same exact time period, and I just want to point this out because you mentioned the spiritualism movement. The spiritualist movement that was happening at the same exact time is what sparked the modern day Ouija board, which we are going to do a full episode in September, totally focused on the Ouija board and all of its loveliness. But that spiritualist movement at that time period, the Ouija board became a big thing because of women exactly like this. She has had devastating loss, and all she wants to do is connect with her dead loved ones, because all of a sudden the new fad is just because they're dead doesn't mean you can't ring them up. And she wants to ring them up. Wouldn't you? I would too. If I would, same situation. If that happened to me today, I'd do the same thing.
One of my saddest memories as a reader, Chelle, is I had a booth at a fundraiser, and it turned out to be a fundraiser for a woman who had lost her young daughter to cancer. And at the end of the fundraiser, I'm getting ready to pack up, and a woman comes in and wants a tarot reading. And I told her I knew that she was trying to contact someone, and I said that they weren't there, they had passed on. And she kept giving me money and asking for another reading and another reading. And I kept telling her, and it wasn't until about the third time she asked me that I realized she was the woman that the fundraiser was for. And I told her, I said, I know you're trying to contact someone and they're not there. They have moved on. And
that's what I think, especially with this Winchester woman, part of that spiritualist movement was, and it still happens to this day, if I give you more money, you'll tell me.
And she did.
Let me give you another $20 and then you'll tell me. Let me give you another 20 so you can tell me. You could throw all the money that you've got and it isn't going to make that connection.
Her grief was palpable. And I tried to give her the money back and she wouldn't take it. I ended donating most of it back to the fundraiser. I couldn't do it. I wanted to tell her something. I wanted to lie. And maybe I should have. I don't know. But anyway, Sarah was doing that with a medium, and this medium contacted her husband. She was just so grief-stricken. She wanted something to hold on to her child and her husband. And her husband said he was being tormented and that she was going to be haunted and possibly murdered by these spirits if she did not do something to appease them.
Wow, talk about giving the girl some terror.
Quite a bit of it. And who knows how many people then, or fuck now, have been killed by Winchesters and weapons.
Kind of the nature of the business.
Exactly. And so this medium said that William told her to go west and to build a house that would hold the spirits of all these people, all these angry spirits that had been killed by Winchester weapons, and that way she would be safe, but only if she kept building to appease their restless souls. So she moves out west.
It's like a ghost motel?
Basically. Sarah moved out west to San Jose, California, and she bought an 8-room farmhouse and then began the wildest, the biggest home renovation of all time. She started building in 1884 and never stopped.
Until her death?
The hammers never ceased. At one point, the house was 7 stories high.
Oh, shit.
And an earthquake in 1906 damaged the house extensively. And Sarah was trapped in a room, and they actually had to pry her out using crowbars, and it took hours.
Oh, shit.
So she was terrified, and she took off the top 3 floors and then decided to go outward. It eventually took up 26,000 square feet of space.
Holy shit.
One of the rooms was a grand ballroom. that cost $9,000 at the time to build.
So she took basically the whole fortune and was using it to build onto this house never endingly.
Oh, honey, she just used a drop in the bucket of the fortune, even though the house at the end cost $5 million at the time.
Oh, wow.
Total. That's just pennies of her fortune to build this extravagant house. And she spared no expense. It was beautiful. The outside of the house is in the Queen Anne style, which is ornate and gorgeous, turrets and balconies and all of that Queen Anne deliciousness. And the inside is something called the aesthetic movement. And what the aesthetic movement is in home decorating is even useful items should be beautiful. So the doorknobs are carved and intricate. There's little details in everything. It's all just beautiful, stunningly beautiful.
Who lived there with her?
No one. She lived there alone.
In that big, huge house?
In that big, huge house. So she has this grand ballroom. I'm going to tell you one little tidbit here. She built a grand ballroom, and in it is something very, very mysterious. In a house full of mystery, this was really mysterious. There's like a secret door in the ballroom.
Ooh.
And behind the door is a metal door, like a security door.
Weird.
And then behind that door is a safe. And once you get into the safe, there's yet another security door. And inside that security door was a safe.
What? Talk about being paranoid about your goods.
So something special was in there, and it wasn't opened until after her death.
What was in there? What was in there? What was in there?
I'll tell you later.
Yeah.
All right. So something very, very precious. So she had this beautiful ballroom. She had a seance room. She was huge still in the spiritualist movement and had a seance every single day.
Wow. Wow.
She was always asking what she could do or what she could build onto this house in order to appease the spirits. In this house, there are, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but not only are there tons of rooms, there are, there's 3 elevators, 6 kitchens, 13 bathrooms, and the number 13 is really prominent. There's 17 chimneys, 40 staircases, 47 fireplaces, 52 skylights, 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, and 10,000 windows.
Let's just circle back to one person lived there.
And also the windows, to kind of put that into perspective for you, the Empire State Building in New York City has 6,500 windows.
Wait, and how much does this house have again?
10,000.
Oh my God! Like,
This
you have to have a full-time crew of window washers.
She did. Literally, the work never stopped on this house. And she built it all out of redwood. She said it had to all be built out of redwood.
Was that what the ghosts told her?
I think so. But she hated the look of redwood. So she had them paint it complete with a faux grain to make it look like a different kind of wood.
Oh, Lord.
I guess they use like 10,000 gallons of paint.
Rich people problems.
Right? So build it of redwood, but make it look not like redwood.
Make it look like pine.
Right? So the number 13 I mentioned was really important, and it's all over the place. There's like 13 panes of glass in a lot of the windows, or 13 blue jewels in the window.
Yeah, but that makes sense with the whole spiritualist movement and some of the ideas that they were following at that time. So for her to be engulfed in that movement totally makes sense.
Yep. There were 13 hooks in the seance room, 13 overflow drains in a sink in a room called the Hall of Fires, and 13 parts to her will, which she signed 13 times.
Superstitious much?
Yeah, just a little bit. The house was filled with innovation. She had 2 indoor conservatories. She loved gardening, and she had indoor plumbing and faucets built into almost every room, which indoor plumbing was not really a big thing at the time. She had push button gas lights. She had forced air heating through the whole house. She even had like a pneumatic tube communication system through the whole house so she could communicate with the servants that worked there.
Which in this time period, all of these amenities were like only for like not even the 1%, like the 0.5%.
Exactly. She had a shower at a time when everyone just had bathtubs. And this house is wild, to put it mildly. There are staircases that go up to a blank wall. There's doors that open to the outside or to a brick wall. There's rooms built inside rooms. The staircases sometimes will have little tiny stairs that switch back and forth and in odd spiral patterns. Some of the rooms will have windows that are installed and use a type of glass so that the outside world looks upside down.
Oh, no shit.
There's balconies on the inside. There's skylights in floors that look down to the room below. It's just a really unusual house. And some people say it was built kind of maze-like in order to confuse the spirits that came in.
Oh, like Hotel California. Once you come in, you can't leave.
Pretty much. And again, the thought was that she was trying to outrun all these angry spirits that had gotten her husband and her daughter. And some people say that she thought that if she continued work on the house, she might somehow achieve immortality, that she and the house would just continue on forever.
Kind of meld into one, basically.
Yeah. And it's also said that in order to confuse the spirit, she would sleep in a different bedroom, a different one of the 40 different bedrooms every single night.
So really, honestly, it sounded like her grief turned into paranoia.
Very much so. Very much so. Construction happened every single day for 40 years.
Wow.
Until September 5th, 1922, when she died at home in a bedroom of the house.
So she dies, 1920s. What happens to the house?
Well, construction ceased immediately. Like workers literally laid their tools down, got up and walked away. That was it.
Never went back? Ever, ever, ever?
Never, ever, ever. Her niece was the sole heir to her fortune, and the house wasn't mentioned in her will at all, oddly. But I believe all the objects were sold off, and it took 6 months to empty the house of objects.
Wow.
And then the house itself was auctioned off. Now, remember, I said she had spent about $5 million at the time, 1923 money, which is about $87 million today. Do you want to know how much the house was purchased for just 5 months after Sarah died?
Oh, Lord. What?
$135,000.
Wow. Wow.
And it was purchased by a gentleman, I believe, who did carnival. He was known for doing carnival rides, and he immediately turned it into a tourist attraction. 5 months after Sarah died, the doors opened to the Winchester Mystery House as a tourist attraction. And for 100 years, it has been an open house.
Does the man still own it? The same, or not, well, obviously not, it's been 100 years, but like, does the same family own it that got it at that auction?
I don't believe so. The people that own it now do run tours, and there's some pretty amazing Halloween time tours that happen there, and the gardens outside are quite beautiful. I keep meaning to get up there, whether around Halloween or elsewise. The house is rumored to be very, very haunted.
That's what was my question was going to be. You know, she's saying that she kind of built this house as like the Hotel California for ghosts.
Pretty much.
Were the ghosts there? If she's still there, are there any paranormal activities noted? Give me the goods.
Okay. So Harry Houdini even went there after Sarah died and was unable to debunk, supposedly, the spirits in the house. He, at the time, was well known for going around and debunking mediums and seances and things like that. So he reportedly was not able to disprove any of the haunted happenings in the house.
Nice.
Most of them are auditory. People hear footsteps, someone coming towards them, and there's no one there. They'll see shadow people. Shadow people are very often seen in rooms where there is no one. They'll go into a room and you'll see a shadow dart into a room or down the hallway, and there's no one there. There's a few pictures online of the empty house, but you can clearly see a figure of someone standing in the window looking out. One of the apparitions that's seen pretty often is one of the, like we call it like a video haunting or like a residual haunting. This is one of the workmen. I don't believe he died there, but he must have worked there for so long that people see him walking through the ballroom or working at the fireplace in the ballroom. And they'll also see him pushing a wheelbarrow in the basement. And people will describe the same man, the same wheelbarrow, and the same actions. He doesn't try to talk to anyone or do anything, but they'll see him going about his workday, and he's seen very often there.
He basically forgot that he died and is still getting up and going to work every day.
Pretty much, even though I couldn't find record of anyone other than Sarah passing away in the house, which was surprising to me, considering that there were 40 years of construction. You would think
and that's what I was thinking. After 40 years, there had to be, especially in that time period, there had to be some construction accident.
There may have done, but in my research, I wasn't able to find it. So if someone knows, maybe let us know, thestonedwitcheshour@gmail.com. But people, they do hear the auditory hauntings. They do see people quite often. And just the feeling of the house, it's just really creepy. There's a lot of hidden rooms and tunnels. It was even in 1972, they found a room they didn't even know had existed.
Oh, wow.
I believe there was some damage to a wall or something. And when they went to repair it, they found a door behind it and opened it. And there was stuff in the room. It was almost as if she had ordered them to start building around it and had just forgotten that that room was there.
So even the family didn't know about it when they emptied the house after her death then.
Correct. And there have been numerous rooms that they have kind of found that way that
Oh,
are
wow.
just plastered over and just kind of forgotten. There is no floor plan to the house. Now, one of the other non-ghostly theories for this is just that Sarah was an eccentric, brilliant mind who loved beautiful things and loved architecture. And she didn't have a clue how to draw up a plan or design a house. And so she would just give these ideas to the workmen and just wing it and go with it. And then just fill it with gorgeous, beautiful things. And did that to kind of appease her sadness and spend money, man, because she had it to spend.
I would have to guess that it's probably a little bit of both, you know?
And she was alone and eccentric. She didn't go out. She stayed in her big, huge, weird house and just continued to build on it. And so I think rumors kind of flowed, but she definitely was into spiritualism.
Well, she had a singing room, for God's sakes.
That's right. And after she passed away, they did break into that many-doored safe. And do you want to know what was in it?
Tell me.
In it was just a couple simple things. It was the obituary for her husband and her daughter and a lock of each of their hair.
Ooh.
And that's it. Those were her most precious things that she kept the safest.
That's pretty safe.
It's pretty safe. Yeah. So yeah, she continued to build, and they say you can still hear the sounds of building. And just wandering through the house, it's stunningly gorgeous, and it had so many innovations for the time. And the story itself is really sad. And the fact that people consistently see shadow people and workmen going about their business and hearing the workmen, hearing Sarah walking up and down the stairs, it's creepy, but in a nice way.
Right. I mean, when we see that a lot, there's a lot of stories you hear that houses, castles, buildings were built out of love, whether it be love of two people still alive or love of one of them passed away. But you hear a lot of these stories about places being built out of love that get abruptly ended due to death and then just are kind of hanging there with that same residual, never-ending workman.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be like a bad energy just because spirits are attracted there. And this type of maze, I imagine, it reminds me of a spirit bottle, like a witch's spirit bottle that has like broken glass or something to trap spirits in.
You're stuck.
Right. This is kind of a house. This is a giant spirit bottle that kind of traps things in it because it's just that confusing maze. And so I wouldn't be surprised that it holds things there.
And you know, maybe that is what her intent was. Because if she locked the spirits in the house, you know, they couldn't get to do the things that the spirit of her husband said they were gonna.
Maybe she did manage to appease them. Maybe she did manage to build a trap for them. I don't know. Hopefully, at least she was reunited in some way with her husband and her daughter.
How'd she die in the end? Was it natural causes? Did the
natural causes?
The ghosties finally got her. I know it.
I think she was 88 when she died. She was in her late 80s. Octogenarian, I've seen her called. So I know she was in her 80s when she passed away, and I believe it was natural causes in the house. And she's the only person I could find that had passed in the house.
I would love to go check that out.
Me too.
Gotta be super cool.
It's a little far away for me to go, like going to the Whaley house, but we're gonna do it one of these days for sure.
Nice. Well, I think we had a day.
We have had a wonderful night. I love talking about witchy stuff. I am so excited to get more into witchy things. We should keep that up. Let's keep that energy going. I love that. And maybe our listeners, don't forget to send us in your spooky stories, your personal ghosty experiences, your stoned experiences, and, you know, hey, tell us some of your witchy experiences. What do you want to know? What witchy questions do you have? Email us at thestonedwitcheshour@gmail.com.
We love our listeners.
We do. We have the best listeners. Thank you all for joining us for episode 30.
30. Wow. We're so glad you guys hung around this long. We love it. We're having fun, and we can't wait to talk to you next week on 31.
31. See you then. Take it easy. Stay high. Stay happy.
Stay spooky.
All right. Now we got to do an intro.
Half-ass backwards, right?